Welcome to Anews. I'm Mehmet and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. The world is grappling with escalating crises that continue to reshape global diplomacy. In Gaza, journalist deaths, renewed Israeli strikes, and staggering civilian casualties are highlighting the collapse of basic protections even under a ceasefire framework. At the same time, border clashes between Cambodia and Thailand are calling into question President Trump's self-declared status as a global peacemaker, raising new concerns about U.S. credibility in Asia. And across Europe, pressure is growing within the transatlantic alliance as Trump's demands on Ukraine collide with frontline losses and the debate over rushed wartime elections. To discuss these pressing issues, I'll be joined by Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet, Celik, and international relations expert Nargiz Mammadova from the STEM Analytical Center in Baku.
Gaza's landscape lies in near total ruin, with destroyed homes and mountains of debris stretching endlessly across the enclave. Families are struggling to rebuild their lives amid the devastation, surviving without running water, heating, or electricity.
احنا عايشين تحت الردم زي ما انت شايف وبننام على فرشات مقطعه الحطب باللملم وتلملم الاسفنج نصه بنستأصله وبنولع فيه نار وفيش عندنا كهرباء بنضوي على الكشافات وبدنا لا في عندنا كهرباء نضوي على دفايات ندفوا اولادنا بنولع حطب عشان يدفوا حالهم الاولاد الصغار.
Many now depend on scavenged wood from shattered furniture to light small fires for warmth and cooking. For many families, firewood has become essential to prepare food and stay warm during Gaza's frigid December nights.
بيجوا شباب يعني من الردم ومن الخزر المكسرة ومن البيوت اللي مدمرة بتروح بعض الناس بتلجأ إلى هذا الإشي وتجيب الخشب عشان تقتدي فيه وتأكل وتشرب لأنه فيش وسيلة حياة إلا الشغلة هذه. الغاز مش متوفر، كل شيء مدمر، فبناخذ منهم الخشب هذا، منهم هم بيستفيدوا وكمان احنا يعني بنستفيد يعني الواحد بيمشي حياته بيمشي بيته.
A brisk trade in scavenged wood has emerged in Jabalia, where small merchants buy collected wood and resell it to residents struggling to cook and keep warm.
Welcome back to the program. Dr. Mehmet Celik, Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Dr. Mehmet, of course, as we just saw in this news report, the situation and the circumstances in Gaza, the entire world is watching what's happening right now. People are living in tents, there are floods, there are storms, nowhere to go. And now a latest report has been released by Reporters Without Borders, and it has said that over 250 journalists have been killed by Israel. Let's start with that. Mehmet, how are you looking at this latest report?
According to international law and international norms, during wartime, there's few elements of the conflict that are not supposed to be targets. Civilians, civilian infrastructure, journalists, places of worships, places like hospitals, they're not supposed to be targets during the wars. Israel has not only destroyed civilian infrastructure in Gaza, Israel has not only targeted civilians, babies, women, children. Israel has not only tried to break all the international law, international humanitarian law. Israel has killed more than 60,000 people. But Israel has also attacked medics. Israel has attacked hospitals. Israel has attacked civilian convoys and those who wait for a bucket or a plate of food during humanitarian aid deliveries. Of course, journalists have not also been spared from Israel's attacks. More than 260 or 255 people, journalists, have been killed. But why is Israel deliberately targeting journalists? I think this is something that we all should investigate, uncover, and talk about. The reason why Israel has blocked access to Gaza of international journalists is something that we need to look at. Why is Israel trying to deliberately target journalists? Why is Israel trying to block international independent journalists to come and see what's taking place in Gaza? Why is Israel not only deliberately killing the journalists, but Israel is also arresting, targeting, torturing even those who are under arrest, the relatives of journalists? There is one simple answer to that. Israel is afraid that the truth, the reality in Gaza, if it is exposed, it will change the public opinion internationally against Israel. And actually, what has Israel tried to do with the backing of the United States, with the backing of Western media, by covering or concealing the truth and the reality on the ground in Gaza, has been exposed by Gazan journalists who risk not only their own lives, but risk their loved ones' lives by actually trying to do that journalism activity, by trying to expose the reality on the ground. Of course, they have been targeted, and Israel has killed only this year more than, I believe, 30 journalists so far. In total, the number is more than 250. But what Israel has not realized, or I think what has not perhaps calculated very efficiently, is that now we live in 2025 and everything can be recorded live, everything is streamed live through our mobile devices, and citizen journalism is actually working against Israel, despite the fact that those who share live images, footage, or news from Israel, from Gaza, and to show Israeli atrocities to the international community, they are actually working within the framework, within the algorithms in social media that are also controlled by lobbies, controlled by the ownership that is also pro-Israel. So, despite the fact that the algorithms are also working against those journalists, there has been still that effort to show and expose the reality, the dark face of what is taking place in Gaza. The very simple motivation behind why deliberately journalists are targeted is that there is a truth in Gaza. There is a reality in Gaza that has shown the international community the real face of Israel, the country that, or the state that, or the regime, or those who have been playing the victim card for many years are now actually committing perhaps even worse crimes than what had happened during World War II. Unfortunately, propaganda, media, controlling information is not just delivering information to citizens now. It has turned into a systemic part of how the wars are conducted. And Israel is trying its best, not only by targeting journalists, not only by targeting media outlets, not only by restricting delivery of information to the outside of world or access to Gaza for the journalists, but it is also manipulating information. It is also manipulating information that is shared with the international community. But it is also, Israel also has the backing of Western media, which is very biased. And I think one of the outcomes of this media control, media restriction, or manipulating media and trying to use media and press as a strategy of war is also has also exposed the reality about Western media. The fact that for many years, journalists worldwide looked at Western media as they propagated free, unbiased, objective media outlets. But I think a reality about many mainstream Western media has also been exposed that when the victim is Palestinian, the story is told differently than when it is Israeli. When Israel is targeting the civilians, the story is told and written and captured differently than when it is Israelis that are being targeted. I think that double standard, that hypocrisy, that biased position of Western media has become one of the key moments that it has been exposed. Not only Israel's attempt to systemically use media and information as a weapon against Palestinians, but also that myth about the objectivity of Western media has also been exposed.
Mehmet, you were saying now it's just to hide from the international community the actions, the genocide, whatever has taken place. Israel has been killing journalists so that the information doesn't. People are unable to access that information. But now, over the past few months, you've seen as well that the narrative has changed completely. People know what's going on. People know that it's a genocide. And when we're talking about the death toll, apparently it's 70,000 by the Palestinian health authorities, but it's much more. It's over 500,000. So do you think that still there is inaction from the international community, despite knowing everything that they've seen?
Well, when we're talking about a system that is based on the rules of those who are powerful, it is very difficult to talk about justice. It is very difficult to talk about accountability. It is very difficult to bring those who are responsible for killing, documented nearly 70,000 people, and there's many of those who are still under the rubble. We are saying, about that number, the 60 or 70,000. That number is those who are targeted directly or killed as a result of an attack. But what about those who have lost their lives due to hunger? What about those who have lost their lives due to different sicknesses? What about those who have lost their lives due to lack of medication, lack of proper treatment? Are those counted as part of this number? They're not. So there is indirect killing as well, as famine is used as a weapon of war, as starvation is used as a weapon of war, as restricting humanitarian aid is part of that strategy, limiting medical supplies to go in for needed for treatments. That is part of a strategy. Bombing hospitals, targeting medical staff, limiting energy that is needed, restricting energy that is needed for the hospitals to operate by the generators. Those are also indirect killings, and Israel has been using all these as a strategy of war. When that is the case, and the world is still idle, we need to question the system itself, whether this system is actually able to protect the victim, or is it a system that only protects the interests of those who are powerful. Turkish President Mr. Erdogan very loudly, at every opportunity, he talks about this very famous, his famous saying, the world is bigger than five. What does he mean by that? Of course, we know that this system was set up after the World War II, the UN system. Why? To protect the interests of those who were the winners of the war, right? The permanent fives. And this is why he says the world is bigger than five, because the system is not protecting the interests of those who are victim in Palestine. The system, international system, is supposed to ensure peace and security worldwide of the international community, it is not protecting the interests of those in Sudan, in Kashmir, in different parts of Africa, different parts of Asia, different parts of Latin America, because the interests of those who are permanent members, if the decisions are conflicting, then there is a veto power. So when the United States is supporting Israel, backing Israeli actions at every level, politically, economically, militarily, and Western media's narrative is supporting the Israeli propaganda, then who will hold them accountable becomes a question of power.
Even sports, Mehmet. Russia was kicked out by FIFA and UEFA, but Israel is still there. It's still taking part in all those competitions.
The accountability, if we were to be talking about a just system, the International Criminal Court has, The Hague and many international organizations have already declared that, have already announced and documented that there is a genocide taking place. But who will hold these accountable when the United States is the most powerful country that is backing the Israel? I think, the question of power is very important. The question of system, the international system, is not able to produce solutions. Rather it exacerbates, I think, the problems, the conflicts that are played out at different parts of the world due to conflicts of interests of the bigger powers. I mean, when we're talking about an Israeli state that does not accept the existence of Palestinians who have lived in those lands for thousands of years. The existence of Palestinians is the problem for Israeli, not some other conflicts. So if there is no coexistence and that problem does not find a solution because one side does not give the right to live to the other side, then if we were to be functioning in a just system, then there would be international organizations that would try to find a solution to this. But the system itself is not producing any solutions, let alone trying to hold those who are responsible for a genocide accountable. I think how will this come to an end? When there is a power that can put a stop to U.S. backing of Israel, then it will come to an end. Or when the United States sees that what it is supporting is against every kind of international human rights norms, then it would stop. But right now, we don't see that happening. There is this Gaza ceasefire plan, but even we're talking about phase 2 now, but phase 1 is not even actually fully functional. It didn't actually complete. The humanitarian aid is restricted. The ceasefire is violated very often on day-to-day basis. The phase 2 is not actually, the plan itself is not very transparent, very clear. What will happen to this international stabilization, the task force? What will happen to the governing body that they're talking about? Who will be part of that? And where is the Palestinians in this whole picture, in this whole plan? Where is their agency? Where is their decision-making in this whole process? When this is the case, then we see that due to this power that we're talking about, they're making the decisions, and the decisions are being applied. And nobody is taking into account what the Palestinians want for themselves, and not only what do they want for themselves for their future, but what are they entitled to as their rights. And so when we're talking, you mentioned Ukraine and Russia. There is an invasion there, and we are against that. Türkiye says, does not accept an invasion. But when we're talking about Russia and Ukraine conflict, we see the whole European capitals, they line up. when we see the United States as part of that. But when it is Gaza, when it is the victims that have been suffering from an occupation for over 7 decades, the international community unfortunately remains idle, with the exception of very few countries, very few world leaders like Türkiye, like Mr. Erdogan, that are trying to do all they can to at least have a diplomatic push to find a solution to this conflict.
Mehmet, they stay idle and some ignore it as well, whatever is happening over there. Now, Mehmet, at the end of this month, Netanyahu is expected to meet Trump in Washington, and Netanyahu has said that we will discuss phase 2 talks for the ceasefire. What are your expectations?
Well, I don't have any expectations from that. I mean, what I mean by that is, if we are going to talk about a plan for a solution to a problem that is between the two sides, where is the Palestinian sides in this equation? I mean, you can talk with Netanyahu and decide what you will do for that occupation to continue, for that killing. I mean, unless Netanyahu faces a limit by the United States, he will keep continuing that expansion.
And at the same time, 3 more settlements have also been approved. That just happened yesterday in the occupied West Bank.
You know, one of the problems, and I think one of the sensitive issues is that, of course, given the scope of killing and the genocide taking place and the destruction in Gaza and the humanitarian catastrophe there, we are also shifting away from focusing Palestine as a whole territory. Rightfully, we talk about Gaza and the humanitarian catastrophe there. But the West Bank is not much different in terms of the violence there. You know, what will happen to East Jerusalem and the occupation there? What about the other Palestinian territories that have illegal settlements in? Whose land are they building these illegal settlements on? And I think the word settlement, in a way, I think pacifies that violent nature of the occupation. It is basically coming and confiscating and stealing, dispossessing people that have owned this land from them by force. Illegal settlements. What do you mean settlements? This is a very simple word. It's confiscating, it's stealing by force. It's dispossessing by force. It's dispossessing by violence.
And then killing as well.
Of course. Killing, arresting, raids, destruction of infrastructure, of residential areas. The occupation is not, and the killing is not limited by only one area. The whole Palestinian territory is under occupation.
Mehmet, thank you so much for those comments and that analysis on the latest developments in the occupied Gaza Strip. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his country will be ready for elections if the international community guarantees securities for such a vote to be held.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his country will be ready for elections in 60 to 90 days if the United States and Europe guarantee security for such a vote.
І так як це питання сьогодні піднімає президент Сполучених Штатів Америки, наші партнери, я відповім дуже коротко. Дивіться, я готовий до виборів. Мало того, я прошу зараз, і заявляю це відкрито, Сполучені Штати Америки допомогти мені. Можна разом з європейськими колегами забезпечити безпеку для проведення виборів. І тоді наступні 60-90 днів Україна буде готова до проведення виборів. І я особисто маю на це волю і готовність. Далі, раз так пішла справа, я прошу, щоб депутати нашої фракції, в принципі, наші парламентарі, підготували законодавчі пропозиції щодо можливості зміни законодавчих основ і закону про вибори під час воєнного стану. Підготували це для мене. Я завтра буду в Україні. Я очікую пропозицій від партнерів, очікую пропозицій від наших депутатів і готовий йти на вибори.
Zelensky said he has asked lawmakers to draft legislative proposals that would allow for changes to the election law during martial law, but stressed that the prerequisite for any election is ensuring a safe voting environment.
This is very, very important.
Ukraine was scheduled to hold a presidential election in March 2024, but postponed it due to the wartime election ban.
They're going through debris.
Ukraine entered the wartime state and has extended it since Russia launched its special operation in February 2022. On the peace plan, Zelensky said on the same day that the plan for ending the conflict with Russia has been restructured into 3 separate documents after weeks of discussions. Zelensky said that the package now consists of a 20-point framework agreement, a document of US-EU security guarantees for Ukraine, and a plan for Ukraine's reconstruction. Earlier on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump said that Ukraine should hold elections and the Ukrainian government has used the war as an excuse to delay elections, as he believes that the Ukrainian people should have the right to choose their leaders.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time. It hasn't been doing particularly well. Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's an important time to hold an election. You know, they're using war not to hold an election, but I would think the Ukrainian people would, should have that choice, and maybe Zelensky would win. I don't know who would win, but they haven't had an election in a long time. They talk about a democracy, but it gets to a point where it's not a democracy anymore.
Zelensky met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to discuss Ukraine peace in London on Monday.
On the other hand, we are seeing these talks and negotiations.
According to a British government release after the meeting, the leaders underscored the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine.
Might be, and we are.
Joining me now is Nargiz Mammadova. She's an international relations expert at the STEM Analytical Center based in Baku, Azerbaijan. Nargiz, welcome to the program.
Hello, nice to meet you. Thank you for invitation.
Nargiz, President Trump keeps saying he's ended 8 global conflicts since January, including Gaza and Ukraine. But now we're seeing fresh clashes between Cambodia and Thailand. How does that shake his whole President of Peace image, and what kind of risk does this create for U.S. credibility in Asia?
Well, actually, I will tell that it's not just a face of Donald Trump and his image of a peace leader who is making peace in all countries, as well as, for example, between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And he's claimed to do this not only between 2 countries like Azerbaijan and Armenia, but also between Ukraine and Russia, and in Asia, and even in Middle East. But there's something that he can't control. There's something that he can't understand fully, because he's not living. First of all, he's not living in this region. He only has several people that source him and gives him advices how to do in this situation or in that situation. The main thing and the main questions that we need to ask here is, okay, if the conflict is ended, like maybe in between Ukraine and Russia, or in Asia or the Middle East, what's next? Okay, because even now it's a political joke between experts that if before we had global power competition, now it's global peace competition, because Donald Trump for him, deal is the main thing. What is behind and after deal doesn't matter for him. But it's not only his image, it's the image of the Republican Party that's now on the rule in the United States of America. The view of Democrats, it's another story. I will not go for it. But Trump will go further and will in each speech say about that he ended so many conflicts. And by the way, it's very interesting that I want to highlight one point. The figures of the peacemakers in the world as well as region changed due to Trump, because before Trump, if major negotiations made in EU, in Geneva, or in Istanbul, or in Europe, now it's changing to Washington and to Middle East countries such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the peace summit was in Egypt. The Israel and Palestine negotiations were in Qatar, in Doha. So you see that the main peace deal makers and negotiators or mediators in this process are not Western countries, I mean the EU countries. It's now transforms to the main partners of the United States of America, which were the countries that I said before.
Now let's talk about the war in Ukraine, Nargiz. Trump is pushing Zelensky to give up parts of Donbass under that Russia-leaning 20-point plan, and he's even calling Europe decaying while hinting he might pull back U.S. support. How is all of this affecting the transatlantic alliance, especially when most Americans still support sending weapons to Ukraine?
Well, actually, it's very interesting how this issue is going on right now, because several days ago, we had a document, the national security strategy or the national security policy of USA to the upcoming year. Actually, it clearly represents how USA is behaving right now under the presidency of Trump. And actually, the main issue here is not about the conflicts about the Russia or Ukraine. It's about how Trump is feeling and explaining his view over to Europe. And I think that the war in Ukraine is a great test, not only for the sovereignty of Ukraine or the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Yes, it still matters, of course. But I think that in this case, also it's test for Europe. How European Union is strong, how NATO is strong, because the Trump's vision is always from one point is business, and he thinks that it's not profitable if only United States of America paid lots of budget for army, for military assistance to the NATO, while the other countries, even small countries, while in NATO, they are not paying as much as the United States of America. And United States of America thinking okay, it's not fair, it's not profitable. This is not how the NATO should be. And of course, the NATO without USA is nothing. I think it's nothing. The Trump will push other countries for these transatlantic to build stronger transatlantic alliances, but it will be separate from the Ukrainian conflict. Coming to the Ukrainian conflict, the vision of Trump and the vision of the European Union on conflict now is on the contrary. Maybe even in the statements of the Ursula von der Leyen or Trump, we can find some common points, but in general view, there's a very contrary issues. There are issues that are not well negotiated between European Union and United States of America, and who can play a better role here to connect them can be Great Britain, can be Keir Starmer, but it depends on the Britain how they will manage these situations. That they really connect the common points between European Union vision and the vision of Trump.
Nargiz, talking about the Ukraine war and Zelensky this week, he was in London. He met Merz, he met Macron, and he met the Pope as well this week. And pressure is being built on him to hold elections, and the United States is also pushing Ukraine to hold elections. Do you think the United States is in some way forcing Ukraine to hold these elections, and what would that tell us about Ukraine's sovereignty?
Well, first of all, let's start that the 99% of outlets says that, as Euronews, Deutsche Welle, doesn't matter, they wrote that it's for Ukraine and it's in their constitution that they cannot go to elections while the war is going on in Ukraine. This is kind of incorrect. I will correct it. The correct version is that the constitution of Ukraine, the country can't go to the new elections while there's a martial law, because constitution is based not on the okay, war is going. No, it's on the law, depends on other law. So is the first point. The second point is that, yes, security in this situation, in this case, I agree with Ukraine, with Zelensky, that yes, security should be 100% while elections. The thing is that will Zelensky win again or not is the second issue, because I will tell brief statistics. Before the war, like not 1 year, 6 months before the war in Ukraine started, the popularity of Zelensky were under 40%. When the war started, like in the same months when the war started, the statistics go up to the 90%, which was the maximum in the history of Ukraine. Right now, it decreases to the 50%, and after the corruption scandal in Ukraine, it decreases to 40% again. And Trump, he's a very wise manipulator, very strategic manipulator. He knows what he said and how the Zelensky will approach to him, I mean to USA, to Trump. So he said that, okay, let Zelensky go to elections. Zelensky said, okay, I will go, but I need security. Of course, the Trumps know this, but for all the security measures, two sides, Ukraine and Russia, should sit on the table of negotiations. If it didn't happen, there will be no negotiations, and there will be so much manipulation, pressure on Zelensky. First, the second point is not only about the security of Ukraine in their inner territory. It's all about the immigrants that moved out from the Ukraine due to war. They live in European Union. Most of them lived in Britain. For them, also, there's a need to make an election, and it's another, let's say, very essential moment. Will European Union will be okay for it? And they will say, okay, we will organize everything. And can the European Union, in this case, in case of their countries, guarantee 100% of the security? It's another issue which is very paradoxical for me.
Nargiz Mammadova from the STEM Analytical Center in Baku, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a nice day.
Dr. Mehmet, Celik, thank you so much for your comments as well and for being with us in the studio.
Thank you, Amar.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.